The Firefighter's Surprise Daughter by Joan Savage. Chapter 1. The Hero Returns. The first thing Luke Harris noticed when he drove back into Cedar Falls was that the mountains hadn't changed at all. They rose on every side of the valley like old friends keeping their arms wide open, their peaks still dusted with the last stubborn patches of June snow, their pine-covered slopes a green so deep it almost hurt to look at. The morning light was hitting the ridgeline just right, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, and for one breathless moment, Luke forgot everything that had driven him away. He forgot the grief. He forgot the guilt. He forgot the 10 years he'd spent running from a place that had always felt more like a wound than a home. Then the town appeared around the bend in the highway, and the forgetting was over. Cedar Falls, Colorado. Population 4,200. Cedar Falls, Colorado. One main street, 3 churches, a volunteer fire department that had recently gone full-time, and more history than Luke could carry in both hands. He pulled his truck to the shoulder and sat there with the engine idling, looking down at the cluster of buildings nestled in the valley, like something out of a postcard. The old grain store was still there. The white steeple of First Baptist still caught the light above the treetops. And there, right at the corner of Main and Ember Street, was a building he didn't recognize. Warm yellow wood, big windows, flower boxes overflowing with purple petunias, and a hand-painted sign that read, "The Morning Ember Cafe." New. That was new. Luke pulled back onto the highway and told himself he was ready. He wasn't sure he believed it. Cedar Falls Fire Station. Number 1 sat on the north end of Main Street, a solid red brick building with 3 bay doors and a flagpole out front, where Old Glory stirred lazily in the mountain breeze. Flagpole out front. Chief Roland Briggs was standing in the parking lot when Luke pulled in, arms crossed, a thermos of coffee steaming in his right hand, a grin on his wide, weathered face. "Well, I'll be damned," Roland said. "You actually showed up." Luke climbed out of the truck and shook the older man's hand. Roland had been fire chief for 22 years, had known Luke's father, and had personally called Luke 8 weeks ago with the offer that had finally, after a decade of excuses, brought him home. "Did you think I wouldn't?" Luke asked. "I thought there was maybe a 40-60 chance." Roland looked him up and down. "You look older. You look exactly the same. That's what a good woman and bad whiskey will do for you." Roland handed him the extra thermos cup he'd been holding. "Come on, let me show you around. Things have changed since you were last here." They walked the station together, and Roland wasn't wrong. Last year. The equipment was newer, the crew was bigger, and there was a training room now where the old storage area used to be. Cedar Falls sat in a region that had seen 3 major wildfires in the past 5 years, and the department had grown accordingly. Luke had been hired as the new lieutenant, a role that came with responsibility, community trust, and a salary that was almost enough to make him forget the cost of accepting it. Almost. "You're staying at the Pineview Rental on Clearwater Road?" Roland asked. "For now, until I find something more permanent." "Good. Crew meets tomorrow morning at 7. I'll introduce you formally then." Roland paused at the door to the equipment bay, studying Luke with the kind of careful attention that men who've fought fires for decades tend to develop. An eye for what's about to ignite. "You okay being back?" Luke looked through the open bay door at the mountains beyond the rooftops. "Ask me again in a week," he said. He needed groceries. "Me again in a week." That was the practical, ordinary truth that brought Luke Harris to the corner of Main and Ember Street at 10:30 on a Tuesday morning, and it was how he ended up standing in front of the Morning Ember Cafe, reading the chalkboard menu in the window without quite meaning to stop. Fresh roasted coffee, homemade pastries, mountain berry scones. The kind of breakfast that a man eating gas station sandwiches for 3 days straight had no reasonable defense against. The bell above the door chimed when he pushed it open. The cafe was warm and smelled like heaven. Coffee and cinnamon and something with brown sugar baking in the back. A half-dozen customers sat at mismatched wooden tables, and soft acoustic guitar played from a small speaker on a shelf crowded with succulents and paperback books. Hand-drawn botanical prints hung on the exposed brick walls. It was exactly the kind of place that made you feel welcomed before anyone had said a single word to you. Luke stepped up to the counter. He was reading the menu board above the espresso machine when he heard a voice from the kitchen. Clear, warm, with a laugh tucked inside it, and every cell in his body went still. "Donna, the blueberry muffins are ready, and please do not let table 4 talk you into giving them extra cream again. We are not a dairy farm." She came through the kitchen doorway, wiping her hands on a white apron. Her dark hair pulled up in a messy bun, flour on her left cheekbone, and stopped dead when she saw him. For 3 full seconds, neither of them breathed. Ashley Morgan looked exactly like herself. That was the first thought that broke through the white noise in Luke's head. 10 years, and she was still exactly herself. Those dark eyes, that slight lift of her chin when she was surprised, the particular stillness she got when she was working out whether to feel something or push it down. "Luke," she said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't entirely steady, either, she said. "Hey, Ash?" His voice came out quieter than he'd intended. She blinked once, squared her shoulders, walked to the counter with the practiced calm of a woman who had been managing herself under pressure for a long time. "I heard you were coming back," she said. "Roland mentioned it. I should have called." "You should have." A beat. "What can I get you?" It was such a perfectly ordinary question. Such a completely devastating question. "Coffee?" Luke said. "Black, and whatever those are." He pointed at the glass case where a row of golden scones sat dusted with powdered sugar. "Mountain berry. They're good." Ashley turned to the espresso machine, and Luke watched her hands move with practiced efficiency and tried to remember how to be a person who wasn't currently being undone by the sound of her voice. She set the coffee and the scone on the counter without meeting his eyes. "For here or to go?" she asked, eyes. He looked around the warm, beautiful room she had built from nothing, in the town he had abandoned, in the years he had wasted. "For here," he said. She nodded. $4.50. He paid. He sat down at a table by the window. He drank his coffee and ate the scone, which was, genuinely, the best thing he had tasted in years, and he watched the mountains through the glass, and he thought, this was always home. This was always what I was running from and running toward at the same time. He didn't look at Ashley again before he left, but he felt her looking at him. When he got back to his truck, he sat for a moment with his hands on the wheel and realized that his 40-60 odds had just shifted considerably. Something was happening in Cedar Falls. Something was beginning again. He just had no idea yet how much. Chapter 2. The Girl with His Smile. Luke's second week in Cedar Falls settled into a rhythm that felt, in spite of everything, almost manageable. He ran drills with the crew each morning. He studied the local topography, the ridgelines and drainage patterns and fuel loads that would determine how a fire moved through this particular landscape. He ate breakfast at the Morning Ember 3 times because the coffee was genuinely the best in the county, and not at all because he was hoping for another conversation with Ashley, even though Ashley had apparently developed a talent for being thoroughly occupied with something in the kitchen whenever he appeared. The town was getting used to him again. He could feel it happening in small ways. A wave from the hardware store owner, a nod from the pastor of First Baptist, an invitation to the Lions Club barbecue that he politely declined. Cedar Falls had a long memory, and it remembered Luke Harris the way small towns tend to remember the people who left, with a certain careful warmth, like touching something that used to burn you. It was on a Thursday afternoon, 8 days after his return, that everything changed. He was coming out of the fire station's side door with a clipboard and a coffee when he heard it, a clear, carrying laugh, the kind that seems to catch the light. He looked up and saw a girl sitting on the low stone wall across the street from the station, watching the building with the focused intensity of someone who has been waiting for something all their life. She was maybe 9 or 10, dark-haired, in cut-off shorts and a yellow t-shirt, a sketch pad balanced on her knees. She was drawing the fire truck visible through the open bay door, with the tongue-tip-out concentration of a child who takes art seriously. Luke wouldn't have thought twice about it, except that just then she looked up and caught him watching her, and she grinned. And the grin stopped him cold. He knew that grin. He had seen it in photographs his mother kept on the mantel. That grin. He had seen it in mirrors and in old-school pictures, and in the one photo he still carried in his wallet of himself at age 12, standing in front of a Christmas tree with the particular gap-toothed joy of a child who had not yet learned what losing things felt like. It was his grin. It was his grin on a little girl's face, and the world tilted sharply under his feet. "Cool trucks," the girl called across the street, unconcerned by his staring. "Yeah?" Luke heard himself say from somewhere far away. "I'm going to be a firefighter when I grow up." She said it with the absolute certainty of someone who has never been told that certainty is a luxury. "I've already picked out my gear." "Is that right?" He crossed the street without quite deciding to. "What do you know about firefighting?" She sat up straighter. And there it was again, that posture, that tilt of the head that he recognized the way you recognize a word in a language you thought you'd forgotten. "I know about fuel and oxygen and heat. The fire triangle? I know that wildfires spread faster uphill because heat rises. I know that you have to read the wind." She paused. "I read a lot." Luke crouched down to her eye level, because he needed to be sure, because he needed to look closely, because something in his chest was doing something violent and unavoidable. Dark eyes, his mother's cheekbones, his jaw, his grin. "What's your name?" he asked. "Mia," she said. "Mia Morgan?" "Morgan, Ashley's last name." "I'm Luke," he said carefully. "Luke Harris. I just started at the station." "I know," Mia said, completely matter of fact. "You're the new lieutenant. Mom said you came back." She tilted her head. She didn't seem super happy about it. "Your mom is—" He stopped. "Who's your mom?" Mia looked at him like he had asked what color the sky was. "Ashley Morgan. She owns the cafe." A pause. "Didn't you know her? She said she knew you." Luke sat back on his heels. "You know her?" The afternoon sunlight was warm on his shoulders. Somewhere down the street, a car radio played a country song. A hawk turned slow circles over the ridgeline. "Yeah," he said, from very far away. "I knew her." Mia studied him for a moment with those dark eyes that held something he recognized as his own, a particular directness, a weighing up. Then she turned back to her sketch pad. "Your trucks are really clean," she said. "You must take good care of them." "We try to," Luke said. He stood up slowly. His legs felt uncertain. "Do you come here a lot?" "Every Thursday. Mom has her supply delivery, and I come here and draw." She held up the sketch pad. The fire truck was rendered with surprising skill. The proportions right, the details careful. "Do you think I could come inside sometime? To see the actual equipment?" "I think that could probably be arranged," Luke said. She gave him the grin again, and he had to look away. Luke said. He drove to Pineview Road and sat in his rental house for a long time without turning on any lights. He did the math. He did it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, because the brain does that when it can't accept a sum. It keeps adding the numbers up, hoping to get a different answer. Ashley and he had been together the summer before he left. The accident that took his younger brother Danny had happened in late September. Luke had left Cedar Falls 2 weeks after the funeral, unable to breathe, unable to stay, unable to make anything right. That was 10 years ago. Mia Morgan was approximately 9. Luke pressed the heels of his hands against his eyes and thought about a little girl with his smile and his mother's cheekbones and 10 years of a life he had missed, and something deep in him, something he had kept very carefully sealed for a very long time, cracked open. He had a daughter. Very long time. He had a daughter, and Ashley had never told him, and he had been 4 states away not knowing, and Mia had grown up without a father, and none of it, not a single moment of it, could be taken back. He picked up his phone, put it down, picked it up again. What do you say? What possible words existed for this? He put the phone down and stared at the dark ceiling, and thought about the way Mia had said your trucks are really clean, like it was the highest compliment she could pay, and the way she had known all about the fire triangle without prompting, and the way she had looked at the fire station like she already belonged there, like it was already home. He thought about that for a very long time. Chapter 3. The Secret Revealed. Ashley was restocking the pastry case the next morning when the cafe door opened, and she knew without looking up, the way you know certain things in your bones, that it was Luke. She had been braced for this. Certain things in your bones. She had been bracing for it since Roland Briggs had mentioned, carefully and with the exact expression of a man delivering potentially explosive news, that he'd offered Luke the lieutenant position, and Luke had said yes. She'd had 8 weeks to prepare. She thought she had done a decent job of it. She had decided, in the rational, organized part of her mind, that she would be polite and professional and completely unaffected, because the alternative, being affected, was not something she could afford. She looked up. Luke's face told her everything. He didn't look angry. She had spent weeks fearing anger. He looked wrecked. He looked like a man who had been taken apart in the night and hadn't quite managed to put himself back together yet. His eyes found hers across the room, and there was something in them so raw and so careful that Ashley's carefully constructed composure developed an immediate and serious crack. "We need to talk," he said quietly. Crack. The cafe was empty. She didn't open officially for another 40 minutes. He must have known that. He must have waited. She set down the tray of muffins. She untied her apron with hands that were steady through sheer will. "Okay," she said. "Let me make coffee." She made 2 cups on autopilot, muscle memory carrying her through the familiar motions, while her heart performed something complicated and terrified in her chest. She carried them to a table by the window, the same table he had sat at 2 days ago, and sat down across from him. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The mountain light was doing its early morning thing outside, pale gold and impossibly clean, touching the tops of the pines along the ridge. "Mia?" Luke said. Ashley wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "Yes. She's mine." It wasn't a question. Yes. The word landed between them, and neither of them moved. Yes. Ashley watched him absorb it, watched the slight tightening around his eyes, the almost imperceptible way he seemed to be breathing very carefully, as if breathing too hard might break something. "How old is she?" His voice was perfectly controlled. 9. She'll be 10 in November. A muscle worked in his jaw. Why didn't you tell me? And there it was. The question she had been rehearsing answers to for nearly a decade. She had the speech ready, reasonable, measured, explaining the circumstances. But sitting here with Luke's wrecked eyes on hers, none of the reasonable, measured words arrived. What came instead was the truth. You were gone, she said. You left 2 weeks after Danny's funeral, and you didn't look back. You didn't call. You didn't write. You left a voicemail 3 months later saying you needed more time, and that was it, Luke. That was the last I heard from you. She kept her voice even with effort. I found out I was pregnant 4 weeks after that voicemail. Effort. You were in Denver? Then you were in Bozeman. Then someone told me you'd taken a position in Seattle. She paused. I called you once. It went straight to voicemail. I left a message. You never called back. Luke's expression changed. A flicker of something. Confusion. Then a dawning, pained understanding. I changed my number, he said slowly. After I got to Seattle, I didn't... He stopped. I didn't know there was a message. I know. Ashley set down her cup. I figured that out eventually. But by then, Mia was 2 years old, and you had moved on, and I had built something here, and I... Her voice, so carefully controlled until now, dropped. I didn't want her to know a father as an absence. I didn't want her to wait for someone who might not come. I would have come, he said, very quietly. Ash, if I had known... I know that too. She met his eyes. I know that now. I think I knew it then, and I was scared, and I was hurt, and I made a decision that I have questioned every single day since. She exhaled slowly. I'm not going to tell you it was right. I'm not going to ask you not to be angry. I'm not angry, he said, and strangely, she believed him because he didn't look angry. He still looked wrecked, but beneath the wreckage, there was something else working, something that looked, improbably, like resolve. What do you want, Luke? She asked. He looked out the window at the mountains for a long moment. I want to know her, he said. I know I don't have a right to just walk into her life. I know it's not simple, but she's my daughter, and I have missed 9 years, and I don't want to miss any more. Ashley closed her eyes briefly. She had known this moment would come, had known it the instant she'd heard he was returning, and she'd known, in the deep and honest part of herself, what her answer would have to be. Because whatever pain lived between herself and Luke, Mia deserved her father. Mia had always deserved her father. I'll talk to her, Ashley said. She doesn't know about you, about who her father is. I've told her your father wasn't able to be in your life. She paused. I'll tell her the truth, and then she gets to decide how fast this goes. Her pace, not yours, not mine. Luke nodded, and the gratitude on his face was so unguarded, so completely unarmored, that Ashley had to look away before it did something to her. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me. This is going to be complicated. I know. And Luke? She met his eyes again. Whatever is or isn't between us, that comes second. Mia is first. Always. Agreed, he said, without a second's hesitation. And that automatic, unhesitating prioritizing of their daughter was the first thing he'd said in this conversation that made Ashley feel something warm move through the cold, careful place she'd been living in for 10 years. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not yet. But the possibility of it. She told Mia that Sunday evening. They were on the back porch of their house, which backed up to a meadow full of lupines, watching the light go amber over the western ridge. Ashley had agonized over the words for days, had practiced them, had thrown them all out and started over. In the end, she sat down beside her daughter on the porch steps and simply told the truth, in plain, clear language, the way Mia had always deserved. Mia listened with her characteristic stillness, that focused, weighing attention that had always made Ashley feel slightly unnerved, like she was being assessed by someone much older. When Ashley finished, Mia was quiet for a while. "He didn't know about me?" Mia was quiet for, she finally asked. "No, baby, he didn't. But you knew where he was." The careful, honest answer. "For a little while, yes, and I made a choice I shouldn't have." She held her daughter's gaze. "That is on me. That mistake is mine, not his." Another long pause. Mia picked a loose thread on her shorts. "And he's at the fire station, the new lieutenant." Her voice held a quality Ashley couldn't quite read. "Yes." Mia looked up. "He talked to me," she said. "Last Thursday. He was really nice." A beat. "He said I could come see the equipment." Ashley felt her heart contract. "He didn't know who you were then. He found out after." Mia thought about that. "So he figured it out on his own?" Something in her voice lifted slightly. "Like, he could tell?" "He could tell." Her daughter was quiet for another moment. Then, "Can I think about it?" "For as long as you need," Ashley said. Mia nodded. "For as long as you need." She leaned against Ashley's shoulder, the warm, solid weight of her, and they watched the mountains go from gold to rose to purple together, and Ashley held her daughter close and let her breathe, and thought, whatever comes next, we will get through it. We always do. 2 days later, Mia came to Ashley in the kitchen of the cafe and said, matter-of-factly, "I want to meet him. For real. Can you set it up?" Ashley put down her mixing bowl. "You sure?" "He knew I was his," Mia said simply. "Without anyone telling him. That means something." Ashley looked at her daughter, this brave, direct, surprising person she had grown, and felt something unlock in her chest. "Yeah," she said softly. "It does." Chapter 4. Learning to be a Father. Luke stood outside the cafe at precisely 2 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon and felt more nervous than he had on his first day in a burning building. He had fought wildfires across 4 states. He had pulled people out of collapsed structures. Wildfires across 4 states. He had held a hose in 60-mile-an-hour winds. None of it had prepared him for the particular terror of standing on a sidewalk in Cedar Falls, knowing that a 9-year-old girl was inside who might, depending on the next hour, decide whether to let him into her life. He pushed open the door. Ashley was behind the counter, and she gave him a look that was carefully neutral and somehow conveyed, with extraordinary efficiency, both good luck and don't you dare mess this up. She tilted her head toward the back corner. Mia was at a table with a book, a glass of chocolate milk, and an expression of elaborate casualness that Luke recognized immediately as performance. She looked up when he approached, and her eyes were so direct it was almost startling. "Hi," she said. "Hi," Luke said. He pulled out the chair across from her. "Okay to sit?" She considered this. "Yeah." He sat. She looked at him. He looked at her. "Yeah." The afternoon light came through the window, and he catalogued again, helplessly, everything he saw of himself in her face, and everything that was purely and entirely Ashley, and purely and entirely Mia herself. "Mom told me you used to be scared of heights," Mia said, out of nowhere. Luke blinked. "She said that? And that you can't whistle?" "That's..." He attempted to whistle, produced a weak, breathy sound that was technically nothing. "Accurate." Mia grinned. His grin. And something in him settled slightly. the way it does when a door you've been pushing finally gives. I can whistle really loud, she offered. She pursed her lips and produced a clear, piercing whistle that made two people at nearby tables look up. That is genuinely impressive, Luke said. I know. She picked up her book, put it down again. Mom said you were sad when you left, that something bad happened? My brother died, Luke said. He kept his voice steady. His name was Danny. He was 20 years old. He kept his voice steady. Mia absorbed that. That's really sad? Yeah. Did you love him? Very much. She nodded slowly, the way kids do when they're fitting new information into the architecture of what they already understand about the world. My best friend Emma's grandpa died last year. She was really sad. She said it felt like a hole. That's exactly right, Luke said. Exactly like a hole. A pause. Does it get smaller? The hole? He thought about the last 10 years, about the particular geography of grief, the way it doesn't disappear, but you learn, eventually, to build your life around it. It doesn't get smaller, he said. But you get bigger, so it takes up less of you. He paused. Does that make sense? Mia considered. Kind of like how a crack in a sidewalk doesn't fix itself, but the grass grows back around it? Luke looked at his daughter for a long moment. That's better than how I said it, he told her. She looked pleased. I know, he told her. Then, with no transition. Are you going to want to do dad stuff? Luke chose his words carefully. I'd like to get to know you, if you want that too. He met her eyes. There's no pressure, Mia. Seriously, your pace. She studied him with that weighing look. What's your favorite color? Blue. He paused. The specific shade of blue that mountains turn at dusk. Her expression flickered, something warm moving through the careful evaluation. Mine's orange, like fire. Good color for a future firefighter. I know. She picked up her chocolate milk. Okay, she said, almost casually. We can try the dad stuff. Luke had to take a moment. He looked at the table, composed himself, looked back up. Thank you, he said. Don't thank me yet, she said, with a world weariness so comically Ashley that Luke almost laughed out loud. I'm pretty demanding. I can handle demanding, he said. It's kind of part of the job. The station tour happened the following Saturday. It's kind of part of the job. Mia arrived in full seriousness, with a small notebook and a pencil, prepared to assess the situation. She inspected the engine bays with the gravity of a fire marshal, asked the crew 17 questions that Luke counted, several of which left experienced firefighters slightly impressed, and stood in the turnout gear fitting room with an expression of barely contained wonder. Luke let her try on a helmet. It dropped over her eyes immediately, and she pushed it up with both hands and beamed out from under it, and the crew, who had been briefed on the situation in broad strokes by Roland, who apparently knew everything, collectively melted. Firefighter Pete Garza, a broad-shouldered 26-year-old who had never been observed being gentle with anything, crouched down and showed her how the clasps on the coat worked. She listened with intense focus and made notes in her notebook. What's in the notebook? Luke asked her quietly, while Pete was explaining the air tank. Notebook. She showed him a page. She had drawn a quick sketch of the engine, labeled the major components, and written SCBA equals self-contained breathing apparatus. Thermal imaging camera detects heat. Average response time, Cedar Falls, 4.2 minutes. Where did you get the response time? He asked. I asked the dispatcher. She was nice. She said it like this was perfectly normal, which, Luke was beginning to understand, was how Mia operated. She wanted information, she found the person who had it, and she asked. He thought, She is going to be extraordinary. Whatever she decides to do with her life, she is going to be absolutely extraordinary. After the tour, they sat on the low stone wall outside and ate ice cream cones from the truck that had been parked 2 blocks down. Mia had gotten strawberry. Luke had gotten the same, because she had asked what his favorite was, and he had said, honestly, that he hadn't had ice cream in so long he'd forgotten, and she had said with great authority that strawberry was the correct answer, and he should trust her. He was trusting her. That was the thing he hadn't expected. How easy it was, actually, to trust this person. How quickly she had gotten under his defenses, not through any kind of charm offensive, but simply by being herself. Direct, curious, funny, unflinching. Ashley appeared at 3:45, rounding the corner from the direction of the cafe. She stopped when she saw them side by side on the wall, both in slightly sunlit profile, both eating strawberry ice cream with identical thoughtful expressions. She stood very still for a moment. Then she walked toward them, and her face held something that Luke couldn't fully name. Some complex mixture of wonder and grief and relief, and something softer that she shuddered before he could read it clearly. "Good tour?" she asked Mia. "Very productive," Mia said seriously. "I have 17 pages of notes." "Of course you do." Ashley looked at Luke briefly over the top of Mia's head. "Thank you," her expression said. He gave a small nod. "We're okay," he hoped to said back. Mia held up the remainder of her cone. "Luke says strawberry is the correct flavor. I told him." "You've trained him well?" Ashley said dryly. "I know," Mia said. "He's a quick learner." Luke caught Ashley's eye, and for the first time, she actually smiled at him. Small, carefully guarded, but real. Just for a second. Just enough. It was the best thing that had happened to him in 10 years. Just enough. Chapter 5. A Place in Her Heart. June dissolved into July, the way it does in mountain towns. Suddenly, and without apology, the lupines giving way to Indian paintbrush, and the tourists beginning to appear on the weekends with their hiking boots and their coffee cups, filling the morning ember in cheerful, noisy waves. Luke became, without quite planning it, a regular part of Mia's Thursdays. It started practically. She came to watch the station. He came out to talk. It evolved organically, the way things do when a child decides to allow something into her life. By the second Thursday, they were eating lunch at the cafe together. By the third, she had shown him her drawings, and he had told her, with complete honesty, that she had real talent. And she had looked at him with a pleased gravity that reminded him forcefully of his own mother. He was learning her. He was learning the particular map of her. Her intense focus on anything mechanical or scientific. Her love of drawing. Her habit of qualifying every statement with "I know," as if everything she said was already self-evident. He was learning that she read above her grade level and was mildly contemptuous of chapter books she considered intellectually insufficient. That she was loyal to a fault. When her friend Emma had been left out by a group of girls at school, Mia had, with cool and total deliberation, simply not spoken to those girls for the rest of the year. That she was afraid, specifically and privately, of thunderstorms, and that she handled this fear with remarkable composure until she was somewhere safe, at which point she allowed herself to be briefly and quietly scared. He learned this last thing on a Thursday afternoon in mid-July, when a late afternoon storm rolled over the ridge with very little warning and shook the windows of the cafe with 2 sharp thunderclaps. Very little warning. Mia, who had been explaining the Coriolis effect to him with the aid of a napkin diagram, went very still and set down her pencil. She didn't say anything. She just sat there, not moving. Luke looked at her. "Hey," he said quietly. "I'm fine," she said, Her voice was controlled. Her hands were flat on the table. "I know you are," he said. He didn't make a big deal of it. He didn't reach for her. She wasn't there yet, with him. "You want to know a thing about thunderstorms and fire?" She looked at him sideways. "Lightning," he said, "actually starts more wildfires than human activity in most of Colorado, which means that thunderstorms, as scary as they sound, are also exactly the thing we train for." He kept his voice even, conversational, as if he were discussing something completely ordinary. "By the time a storm gets here, I've already run 6 different scenarios for what it might do to the surrounding watershed. So when I hear thunder, my brain goes straight into work mode." Another crack of thunder. Mia's jaw tightened, but her eyes, watching him, were steady. "You turn it into a problem to solve," she said. "Every time." She considered this. Then she picked up her pencil and said, almost normally, "Tell me what the scenarios are." He told her. She took notes. The storm passed. When the sun came back out, she looked up from her notebook and said, matter-of-factly, "That helped." "Good," he said. She went back to her notes. Luke looked out the window at the ridge, washed clean and sparkling, and thought, "I did not know that being someone's father would feel like this. Like finding a frequency you didn't know your radio could receive." The first time she reached for his hand was 3 weeks later. They were at the Cedar Falls 4th of July festival. Ashley had come too, because the cafe had a booth and someone had to manage it. But Mia was officially Luke's responsibility for the evening, a fact Mia had negotiated with cool precision, and Ashley had agreed to with only mild, visible anxiety. The fireworks were over the lake at the far end of the park, and they had staked out a patch of grass with a clear view. The opening of the show, a series of rapid-fire launches that turned the sky white and gold and sent a barrage of sound rolling across the water, was spectacular. It was also extremely loud. Luke felt it a second before he saw it, a small hand finding his in the grass, holding tight. He looked down. Mia was watching the fireworks with determined appreciation, not looking at him, her jaw set. He didn't say anything. He just turned his hand over and held hers, and they watched the sky fill with light together. She let go when the finale ended. She turned to him and said professionally, "The aerial shell sequences were particularly well choreographed this year." "Agreed," Luke said. "I'm not scared of fireworks," she said. "I just like having something to hold on to." "Most people do," Luke said. She looked at him for a moment, that careful, weighing look, and then she said, "I think I might want to call you Dad. Eventually. Not yet, but eventually." Luke sat very still on the cool grass while the crowd around them chattered and children ran with sparklers, and the smoke from the finale drifted over the lake. "Whenever you're ready," he said. "Or never, if that's better. Your call." She nodded seriously. "It'll probably be eventually," she said. "Just so you know." "I'll be here," he said. "I know," she said, and for once, that word held something different in it, not the casual self-evidence she usually meant, but a quieter, more considered weight. A statement of trust. Luke looked out at the smoking lake and the mountains behind it, and felt something in himself, some long-held, low-frequency grief, begin, very slowly, to soften. Ashley watched them walk back toward the cafe booth from across the park. They were talking, Mia gesticulating, Luke listening with his full attention in that way he had, the way he'd always had, that made whoever he was talking to feel like the most important person in the room. Mia said something, and Luke laughed, a real laugh, thrown back, unguarded, and Ashley felt something dangerous happen in her chest. She had been very careful. She had kept things organized and sensible in her heart. Luke was Mia's father. That was one thing. Luke and Ashley were the parents of Mia, connected by their daughter, separated by history and hurt, and a decade of parallel lives lived apart. That was a different thing. She had been keeping those two things very separate. Different thing. But he was laughing, and Mia was pleased with herself, and they were walking toward her side by side in the golden July evening. And Ashley Morgan discovered that she was not, despite everything, as organized as she had believed. Her best friend Dana appeared at her elbow with a paper cup of lemonade and the expression of someone who has been watching and drawing conclusions. "Don't," Ashley said. "I haven't said anything," Dana said. "I know what you were going to say." "I was going to say that man is extremely good-looking and clearly very good with your daughter, and that you have been alone for—" Dana. "7 years, and that the heart wants—" Dana. "What the heart wants, Ashley, and I'm just saying—" "Nothing is happening," Ashley said firmly. "It's complicated." Dana sipped her lemonade. "Things are only as complicated as you make them." Ashley watched Luke and Mia reach the booth. Mia launched immediately into a description of the fireworks' technical merits. Luke caught Ashley's eye over the top of Mia's head, and that faint warmth was back in his face. That easy, private warmth, for her specifically, that he'd always had. Her heart did its dangerous thing again. "Complicated," she repeated, mostly to herself. Dana, at least, had the grace not to say another word. Chapter 6. The Fire in the Mountains. The call came on a Saturday morning in late July, when the mountains were dry from 3 weeks without rain, and the air smelled, to those who knew how to read it, like waiting. Luke was at the station reviewing fuel moisture reports when the radio crackled to life, and the dispatcher's voice, tight and controlled, said, "Station 1, we have a confirmed wildfire report on the North Ridge above Miller Creek. Initial reports suggest 2 to 3 acres, spreading northeast. All available personnel respond. 2 to 3 acres." The next 45 minutes were the particular controlled chaos that Luke had trained for, lived for, and quietly feared. The donning of gear, the loading of equipment, the rapid briefing that happened in the 7 minutes it took to reach the staging area on the Miller Creek access road. He had his crew positioned and assigned before the second engine arrived, working from the topographic map he'd spent the last month memorizing. The fire was already bigger than 3 acres. He could see the smoke column from the access road, thick and white at the base where it was burning through green material, darkening to brown-gray higher up where it was hitting the drier timber. The wind was out of the southwest at 12 miles an hour, pushing it northeast toward the ridgeline, and beyond the ridgeline, 1.5 miles of slope, and then the edge of Cedar Falls. "We need to get ahead of it," Luke told Roland, who had arrived with the second engine. "To get ahead of it. If it crests that ridge before we have a containment line—" "I know," Roland said. He looked at the smoke column with the particular stillness of a man calculating odds. "What do you need?" 3 of my crew on direct attack at the left flank. I'll take Garza and Torres and try to cut a line on the right before it hits the dry stand above the creek bed." He met the chief's eye. "And call County for air support. We're going to need a tanker on that ridgeline." Roland got on the radio. Luke turned to his crew. "Listen up," he said. "This fire is going to test us today. The terrain is steep and the fuel is dry and the wind is not our friend. So we stay in communication, we follow the plan, and nobody does anything heroic without clearing it with me first." He looked at each of them. "Is that understood?" 17 sets of eyes said yes. "Let's get to work," Luke said yes. The next 6 hours were the kind of time that exists outside normal counting. Compressed and stretched simultaneously, full of heat and noise, and the particular focused clarity that comes when the work is serious enough to crowd out everything else. Luke's crew cut a fire break along the right flank, while the direct attack team worked the left. The air tanker arrived at hour 2 and dropped retardant on the ridgeline, painting the tree line orange-red. It helped, but the wind was shifting, and shifting winds rewrite fire plans in real time. At hour 4, Luke was working a section of the fire break near the top of a steep drainage when his radio crackled. It was Torres, his voice sharp. "Lieutenant, wind shift. Fire is cutting south toward the drainage. I think it's going to jump our line." Luke assessed his position instantly. He was high on the slope. The drainage below him was full of dry brush. He was high on the... If the fire jumped and came up slope? "All units on the right flank, fall back to the secondary ridge," he said into the radio. "Now. Controlled, no running. Move." He was the last one off the slope. He could hear it coming, that low roaring like the mountain clearing its throat, as he descended through the smoke to the secondary line. The fire crested the primary break 30 seconds after he cleared it, rolled through the drainage in a rush of orange and black, and hit the secondary break and paused, contained by the retardant line from the tanker. Luke stood at the secondary line, breathing hard, watching the fire press against its boundary and hold. He keyed his radio. "All units, report." One by one, his crew checked in, every single one. He let out a breath that had been waiting a long time to leave. He drove back to town at 9 o'clock that evening, coated in ash and soot, exhausted in the specific deep way that only real work produces. The fire was contained at 42 acres, which was a good outcome for the conditions. Nobody had been hurt. He had parked and was sitting in his truck outside the station, too tired to go inside yet, when his phone lit up. "Ashley," he answered. "I saw the smoke," she said. Her voice was careful and measured, and he could hear, under the measure, the fear she was not quite managing to hide. "Are you okay?" "I'm okay," he said. "Everybody's okay." A short pause. "Mia wanted to call you herself," Ashley said. "But I said we should wait until I knew you were..." She stopped. "I'm all right, Ash." Another pause, longer. "Good," she said. And then, very quietly, "I'm glad." He sat in the dark truck outside the firehouse and listened to her breathe for a moment, and thought about how that word, glad, could hold so much in its 4 small letters. Gladness for his safety. Gladness that could mean relief and nothing more. Gladness for his safety. Or gladness that could mean something else, something older, something she hadn't managed to close the door on completely. "Tell Mia I'll bring her the assessment report from the fire," he said. "If she wants it." A soft exhale that might have been a laugh. "She will absolutely want it." "I know," he said, and he heard her actually laugh at that, at his using her daughter's phrase, the echo of it, the small, intimate familiarity. It was the best sound he had heard all day. "Get some sleep," Ashley said. "Yeah," he said. "You too." He sat in the truck a moment longer after she hung up, looking at the mountains. The smoke had cleared. The stars were out in their full Colorado extravagance. So many they seemed almost excessive. The Milky Way splashed across the sky like something spilled. The town below him was lit and quiet. His daughter was in one of those houses, probably asleep by now, probably with her notebook on the nightstand. Ashley was in that same house, probably cleaning up the kitchen, probably with the radio on, probably managing herself back into careful neutrality after the moment of unguardedness that had found its way into her voice. He thought, "I could have gone another 10 years without knowing this was here, without knowing any of it. The thought was the most frightening one he'd had all day. Chapter 7. Falling in Love Again. It was Dana who engineered the dinner. She did it with the particular efficiency of someone who had watched her best friend be carefully unhappy for too long, and she was entirely unrepentant about it. The premise was simple. Dana's husband Marco was making his famous paella. There would be a group of people, and could Ashley and Luke both please just come? Ashley, who knew exactly what Dana was doing and didn't quite manage to say no in time. Luke, who had no frame of reference for Dana's particular brand of benign manipulation and simply said, sure, for Dana's particular. They ended up sitting next to each other at a table on Dana's back porch, surrounded by the golden noise of a Cedar Falls summer dinner party, and the mountains going purple in the dusk, and the particular combination of good food and candlelight that has been making people reconsider their emotional defenses for all of recorded human history. Mia was at a sleepover. Neither of them mentioned this first, but they both noticed it. The first time they had been in the same place without their daughter between them as anchor and buffer and shared project. She made me a card, Luke said, somewhere in the second glass of wine. Ashley looked up. What? Mia. She left it at the station 2 days ago. He pulled out his phone, slightly self-conscious about it, and showed her a photo of a hand-drawn card. On the front, in careful colored pencil, was a fire truck. Inside, in Mia's precise handwriting, to Luke, good job with the fire. The containment was very efficient. Luke, good job. Also, I'm glad you didn't get hurt. From Mia. P.S. I've been thinking, and I think Dad sounds right, if that's still okay. Ashley looked at the photo for a long moment. She told me, she said, that she'd decided. Her voice was soft. She asked me if it was okay, and I told her it was her choice. It's more than okay, Luke said. It's... He stopped. It's everything. Ashley handed his phone back. She didn't meet his eyes, looking instead toward the mountains, where the last light was fading from the peaks in shades of rose and violet. She's like you, she said, in ways I didn't even know were possible. She'd never met you, and she still came out like you. She's like you too, Luke said. The stubbornness is definitely yours. Ashley laughed, a real one, caught off guard. I prefer determined. Determined, obviously. He smiled, and she looked at him, and there it was again, that current between them, live wire and old ache, and something that had never fully become past tense. And old ache. Luke, she said. I know, he said. I know it's complicated. I know there's history, and I know I have to earn back. That's not what I was going to say. He stopped. She looked at the table, then at the mountains, then, finally, at him. I was going to say that I'm sorry, she said. That I should have told you. Whatever was happening between us, whatever I was afraid of, I should have told you about Mia. She kept her voice steady, but he could see it costing her. I took something from you that I had no right to take, and I'm sorry. Luke was quiet for a moment. I've thought about it, he said slowly, about what I would have done if you had told me. Whether I was in any shape to be a father at 25, grief-wrecked and running. He paused. I don't know the answer. Maybe it's better that Mia grew up in a stable home with a mother who knew what she was doing, rather than with a broken version of me turning up and disappearing. He met her eyes. But I also know that she deserved to know me, and I deserved to know her, and those 10 years are gone. And I don't want to spend another 10 being angry about the ones we lost when we could be. He stopped. When we could be what? Ashley asked quietly. The candles on the table flickered in the mountain breeze. From inside the house came laughter, and the clatter of Marco serving seconds. Luke looked at her. This woman he had known at 25, newly afraid of everything, trying so hard to be brave. Who had built something remarkable while he was away? Who was sitting here now, guarded and soft, and completely herself? And who was looking at him with an expression that he recognized from a long time ago, from a meadow in summer and a borrowed truck and the specific feeling of being 25 and absolutely sure. "I don't know yet," he said honestly, "but I'd like to find out." Ashley looked at him for a long moment. "Slowly," she said. "As slow as you need." She nodded, she said, picked up her wine glass, and very deliberately turned it slightly toward his, the lightest of gestures, the smallest of signals. He turned his glass toward hers. Dana, visible through the kitchen window, made no attempt whatsoever to hide her enormous smile. Her husband Marco gently moved her away from the window and told her to come and stir the paella. She went, but she was still smiling. The slow burn of July into August was, for Luke Harris, the education of a lifetime. Not in firefighting, which he understood. Not in parenting, which he was learning. But in the particular art of being known by someone who had once known you completely and is now deciding, carefully and with full awareness of the risk, whether to know you again. Ashley let him in increments. A conversation over coffee before the cafe opened, early morning light and no customers. A text that started as logistics about Mia and drifted naturally into something longer. A Saturday morning hike where he and Mia had somehow also included Ashley, who had said she was only coming for the first mile and had stayed for the whole loop, and who had at some point in the second hour forgotten to maintain careful distance, and had walked beside him down the pine-shaded trail, talking about the town and the business and what she'd wanted her life to be when she was 22. And he had listened with his whole self, the way he had always listened to her. And they had arrived back at the trailhead with autumn columbine in their hands that Mia had picked and distributed, and a feeling between them that was almost, tentatively, something like ease. She was falling in love with him again. He knew it because he recognized it, had seen it once before, in its first version, and was watching its second version now, careful and weather-worn and 10 times more profound. He was falling in love with her too. That part was not complicated. That part had, he suspected, never actually stopped. Chapter 8. The Opportunity That Changes Everything. The email arrived on a Thursday morning in the first week of August. It was from the Colorado Division of Fire Prevention and Control, addressed to Lieutenant Luke Harris, and it informed him that he had been selected as a finalist for the position of Regional Training Coordinator, a role based in Denver, overseeing fire training operations across a 5-county area. The salary was significantly higher than his current position. The advancement opportunity was, by any objective measure, extraordinary. Luke read it 3 times. Then he set his phone face down on his desk and looked at the wall for a while. He had applied for the position 4 months ago, 6 weeks before Roland's call had reached him, back when his plan had still been to keep moving forward, keep building a career, keep putting distance between himself and the past. It had been exactly the kind of opportunity that version of himself would have jumped at without a second thought. He picked up the phone and called his friend and former colleague Marcus, who was based in Denver and had been the one to flag the posting. "I heard you're on the finalist list," Marcus said, without preamble. "Luke, this is it. This is the job." "I know," Luke said. "Denver's a great city. You'd be running the most significant regional training program in the state." "I know what the job is, Marcus." A pause. "But?" Luke looked out his office window at Main Street. He could see the flower boxes outside the morning ember from here. Ashley's purple petunias, bright in the August morning. But things have changed, he said. He told Marcus the broad strokes. Marcus, who was a good friend, listened without interruption. That's a lot, Marcus said when Luke finished. Yeah. What are you going to do? Luke was quiet for a moment. I don't know yet. What are you going to do? You have 2 weeks to decide. The final interview is the 20th. I know. He sat with it all day, turning it over. The job was real. It was important. It was the next chapter of the career he'd been building. Denver was 3 hours away by car. Not impossible, but not nothing either. Not with a 9-year-old who had just started calling him dad, and a woman he was falling in love with again, and a town that had, improbably, started to feel like home for the first time since he was 25. He hadn't told Ashley yet. He kept finding reasons to wait another day. Mia figured it out first. She was, as established, extremely observant. She arrived at the station on Thursday with her notebook and something careful in her face, and when they sat down at their usual table in the cafe, she said without preamble, "There's something you're not saying." Luke looked at her. What makes you think that? You've been checking your phone a lot. What makes you and you looked up Denver on the big map in the training room. I saw it. She set down her pencil. You're thinking about leaving. Luke set down his coffee. He had not, in all his calculations, adequately accounted for a 9-year-old who read topographic maps for fun. There's a job opportunity in Denver, he said carefully. I applied for it before I came back to Cedar Falls. I'm a finalist. Mia was very still. If you took it, she said, would you still come back here? I'd visit, absolutely. Denver is 3 hours. That's not the same, she said. Not accusatory, just factual, the way she said everything. No, he agreed. It's not the same. She looked at the table. I just started calling you Dad, she said quietly. This sentence did something to Luke that he had not prepared his defenses for. It went straight through all of them. I know, he said. I know you had a whole life before you came back here, Mia said. I know you had a whole... And I know that me existing doesn't automatically change everything for you. She looked up. But I want you to know that it changes things for me. So you should make the decision with all the information. Luke looked at his daughter across the table and thought, 9 years old. 9 years old, and she is telling him to make his decision with full information, because she understands that she shouldn't guilt him, but she wants him to know the full weight of what he'd be choosing. She was extraordinary. She had always been going to be extraordinary. Thank you for telling me, he said. She nodded, picked up her pencil, put it down again. Does Mom know? Not yet. Something crossed her face. You should tell her. I'm going to. Today, Mia said. Luke almost smiled, despite everything. Did she put you up to this? No, Mia said. But she's been trying really hard not to love you again, and I think you should know that it's not working. She's been trying really hard, and she should probably get to have all the information too. Luke stared at his daughter. She met his eyes with serene, devastating calm. You are, he said softly. Something else, you know that? I know, she said, and for once, the phrase held its full meaning. He told Ashley that evening. He waited until after the cafe closed and found her cleaning the espresso machine, and he sat at the counter and laid it out plainly. The email, the timeline, the interview date. He didn't soften it or frame it. He gave her the full information, the way Mia had asked him to. Ashley listened without expression. When he finished, she continued, wiping down the machine for a moment. When did you find out? She asked. 8 days ago. She looked up. Her eyes were controlled, but her jaw was tight. 8 days, she said. I should have told you sooner. Yes, she said. You should have. Yeah. She came out from behind the counter and sat at a table, not the warm window table he always thought of as theirs, but a different one, near the back. He came and sat across from her. Are you going to take it? She asked. I don't know yet. What would make you not take it? Her voice was carefully neutral. Ash? I'm asking seriously, she said. Because you had this whole life you built elsewhere, and a career that matters, and I don't want to be the reason you don't take an opportunity you've earned. And I don't want Mia to be the reason either, not in a way that would make you resent. I'm not going to resent my daughter, he said. I know, but I'm also not going to let you choose Cedar Falls out of obligation and then wonder, later, what you missed. She was watching him steadily. So, I'm asking, what would make you choose to stay? He looked at her, at the careful, self-contained woman who had built something beautiful here while he was away, who was sitting at a table in the cafe she'd made from nothing, exhausted from a long day of work she loved, making sure that he wouldn't choose her for the wrong reasons. You, he said. You and Mia. Not obligation, not guilt about the years I missed. I mean... He stopped, found the words. I came back to this town because Roland offered me a job, and I couldn't keep running. But I stayed. He corrected himself. I want to stay because of you, because of who you are and what you've built, and because I've spent 10 years moving around, and I was never home anywhere. And I'm home here. With you. With Mia. He paused. That's not obligation. That's the truest thing I know how to say. Ashley looked at him for a long time. If you take the Denver job, she said slowly, does that mean you leave? It means I have to decide what matters most. She was quiet. It means I have to then decide, she said finally, and it wasn't harsh. It was the thing she'd been building toward, the foundation of it. Take the time you need, but decide honestly, and whatever you decide, tell me. She stood up and gathered her keys. Good night, Luke. He watched her go. He sat in her cafe, in the quiet after closing, surrounded by everything she had made, and he thought about the fire on the mountain and the way the ridge had held, and his daughter's voice saying, I just started calling you Dad, and Ashley's face as she drove away from the festival and toward him, and the mountains, always the mountains, old friends keeping their arms wide open. He thought about what home was. He thought about what he was willing to do to keep it. Thought about what home was. Chapter 9. The Choice. The message from the division arrived on August 17th, a confirmation of his final interview, scheduled for the 20th in Denver, along with a polite note saying they hoped to offer the position to their selected candidate by end of the following week. Luke read it, sat with it, and then, for the first time in 10 years, he stopped trying to figure out what he should do, and just listened. To the mountains outside his window, to the quiet of the town, to the sound of his own life. He called his mother. Patricia Harris lived in Grand Junction now, a neat house with a garden and a dog named Captain, and 7 years of carefully maintained grief for her son Danny and her other son Luke, who had survived but gone away. She answered on the second ring with the particular alertness of a mother who has been waiting, on some level, for a call like this one since her living son left. Lukey, she said, living son left. He winced at the nickname and let it go, because some things you let go. Hey, Mom. You're in Cedar Falls? Not a question. She kept up with things, through Roland's wife Karen, through the particular network of small-town information that functions like a second postal system. I am. And there's a girl. There's a girl, he said. And there's a daughter. He heard her sharp intake of breath. Mom, I have a daughter. Her name is Mia. She's 9. She wants to be a firefighter. She takes notes on everything, and she already knows more about fire behavior than half my crew. His mother was quiet for a moment. Ashley Morgan's girl, she said softly. Yes. Luke. Her voice was full of something. He couldn't name all of it. She has my mother's eyes. I've seen her at the grocery store. I thought there was something. You've seen her? He sat up straight. A few times, over the years. I never let myself. A long pause. I didn't think it was possible. I didn't know. Neither did I. They were both quiet for a moment, holding the weight of that. She's wonderful, Mom, he said. She's... His voice cracked slightly on the next word. He didn't try to stop it. She's just wonderful. I know, Patricia said gently. And Ashley? She's... He stopped. Started again. Ashley is the reason I keep being surprised that I'm still capable of feeling things I thought I'd closed off. That sounds about right. A soft sound that might have been a laugh and might have been a sob. So, what are you deciding? I have a job offer in Denver. I know about that too. Of course she did. I want to know what you think. Oh, you want my opinion now, she said. After 10 years of the strong, silent moving around routine. Mom. I think, Patricia Harris said, with the clarity of a woman who has spent a long time watching her son make himself unavailable to his own life. That you have been waiting to deserve happiness, Luke. Life. And I think that was Danny's tragedy making you punish yourself for surviving. But Danny wouldn't have wanted that. You know he wouldn't. Her voice was quiet and firm. And I think that whatever those mountains are saying to you right now, you should listen. You've always been good at listening to things that matter. He thought about that for a long time after he hung up. He drove to the meadow behind Ashley's house on the morning of August 19th. He'd been there once before. She'd pointed it out on their hike, mentioned that Mia played there in the evenings, that it was where she went when she needed to think. He wasn't sure why he drove there rather than to the cafe, except that it felt like the right terrain for what he needed to do. He didn't go to the house. He sat on the low wooden fence at the meadow's edge and looked at the lupines that still held on in the late summer heat and the mountains beyond them, and he made his decision. He had known what it was, probably, for a while. He had just needed to stop running long enough to hear it clearly. He found Ashley at the cafe before opening, the way he'd found her the morning everything changed. Same flower on her hands, same messy bun. She looked up when the door opened, and her face did its complex thing. Hope and caution, and something that had given up trying to be neutral. I'm not taking the Denver job, he said. She set down the dough she was working. Luke, I know what you're going to say. I know you're going to ask if I'm sure. I know you're going to worry that I'm doing this out of obligation. He crossed to the counter and stood in front of her. I'm not. I want to be here. I want to be here because this is my home, and Mia is my daughter, and you are... He stopped and said the true thing, plainly. You are the person I've been going toward since I was 25 and too broken to know it. Ashley looked at him, 25, and too... The morning light was coming through the east window, and it was doing its particular thing with her eyes, turning them very dark and very bright simultaneously. I need you to be sure, she said. Not just now, not just this morning. I need you to mean it long term, Luke. Because I come with a daughter who has started calling you Dad, and she can't. Her voice held. She can't lose another person. I know, he said. I'm sure. You could still have a version of this if you took the Denver job. You could come back on weekends. I don't want a version of this, he said. I want the whole thing. He held her gaze. I want to be here for the Thursdays. I want to see her grow up. I want to be the person you call when something goes right and something goes wrong. I want mornings in this cafe and winters in these mountains and all of it. All of the ordinary, complicated, real parts. He paused. I want to come home. Ashley was quiet. Then she came around the counter, and she stood in front of him, and she looked up at him with everything in her face that she'd been managing and containing and carefully setting aside. And she said, You should have come back sooner. I know, he said. You made me wait 10 years. I know. I'm not going to pretend everything is resolved, Luke. There's still a lot to work through. I know that too. She looked at him for another moment. Then she put her hands on his face, flowery and warm, and she kissed him, not tentatively, not as something to be undone, but with the fullness of someone who has decided, finally and completely, to stop managing her own heart. He kissed her back, and it was like breathing after a long time of not quite managing it. When they broke apart, she was still holding his face. Mia is going to have things to say about this, she said. Mia already told me you were failing to not love me again, he said. Ashley dropped her hands and stared at him. He said, She said that? Exact words. A pause. Then Ashley covered her face with both flowery hands and made a sound that was laughing, and not quite only laughing. She is such a nightmare, she said, into her hands. She's extraordinary, he said. She gets it from me, Ashley said, dropping her hands. Her eyes were bright. She gets it from both of you, Luke said. Ashley looked at him, and there it was, what he had been waiting to see, what he had been working towards since the moment he walked back into this cafe and found her exactly and utterly herself. The full, unguarded warmth of her, all the way open, nothing held back. Okay, she said. Okay, he agreed. And the mountains outside the window were doing their morning thing, gold and rose and impossibly beautiful, and the cafe smelled like coffee and cinnamon, and somewhere in a house down the street, Mia Morgan was waking up. Chapter 10. Home. At last October came to Cedar Falls like a gift. The aspens turned first, brilliant yellow, shaking in the high passes, and then the color crept down the mountain slopes until the whole valley was burning gently with gold and amber and the particular russet red that meant the scrub oak had joined in. The tourists came for the foliage weekend and filled the morning ember until Ashley had to extend morning hours and hire 2 more part-time staff, and Luke helped on Saturday mornings, learning the espresso machine under Mia's exacting tutelage. That's too much steam, Mia said, from her perch on the counter where she was technically doing homework. I thought you were studying, Luke said. I can multitask. She peered at the milk pitcher. The wrist movement needs to be circular, not back and forth. Where did you learn that? I've been watching Mom make lattes since I was 4. She turned a page in her textbook without looking up. You have to start from the beginning. Ashley, passing with a tray of blueberry scones, said without slowing down. She's right. Circular. Luke looked between the two of them. "Are you two doing this on purpose?" "Always," they said in perfect unison, without looking at each other. He turned back to the milk pitcher and made the movement circular. The microphone, to his genuine surprise, came out perfectly, silky and even. He looked at it. "Huh," he said. "You're welcome," Mia said. Patricia Harris came to Cedar Falls in the second week of October. Luke had suggested it carefully, first to Ashley, then to Mia, giving everyone a long runway and more than enough chances to say no. Neither of them did. Mia, when told that her grandmother would be visiting, was quiet for a moment, processing, and then said, "Does she know about me?" "I told her," Luke said. "She's been looking forward to meeting you." "What did you tell her?" "That you're 9 years old, you want to be a firefighter, you take notes on everything, and you're the best person I know." Mia absorbed this. "Is that all?" "I told her about the fire triangle and the whistling." She looked slightly mollified. "Okay." Patricia arrived on a Friday afternoon, silver-haired and bright-eyed, and when she came into the cafe and Mia looked up from her booth and they met eyes across the room, something happened in the air, some quality of recognition that required no introduction, that moved faster than names. Patricia sat down across from Mia. She looked at the girl's face for a long moment. "You have my mother's eyes," she said softly. "I know," Mia said. Then she paused, as if aware that she had deployed her signature phrase and it might need context. "I mean, I don't actually know. No one ever told me that." She studied her grandmother. "You look like Luke, around the eyes." "So I'm told," Patricia said. "I'm Mia." "I know who you are, my dear," Patricia said. "I've been hoping to meet you for a long time." Mia considered her. "I have a lot of questions," she said. "I have nothing but time," Patricia said. Luke, watching from the counter, felt Ashley's hand find his. He turned. She was watching her daughter and his mother, her expression full of the same overwhelming, complicated feeling that was doing its thing in his chest. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She shook her head slightly. "I'm really okay." He took her hand properly, laced his fingers through hers, and they watched together as Mia opened her notebook to a fresh page and began, with characteristic precision, to interview her grandmother. The Cedar Falls Harvest Festival happened the last Saturday of October, filling Main Street with hay bales and apple cider and 100 yards of string lights and the particular festive noise of a town celebrating the end of the growing season with everything it had. Luke worked the festival in his off-hours capacity as newly elected Lions Club member, which meant he spent 2 hours running the apple bobbing station and another hour judging the pie contest, which was politically complex in ways he hadn't anticipated. Mia was with her friend Emma, both of them in firefighter costumes that Mia had researched with actual technical accuracy. Correct gear proportions, working buckles, boots that were a genuine match for the turnout style. "I love that kid," Roland Briggs said, appearing beside Luke with a cider and nodding at Mia, who was explaining fire suppression tactics to Emma with the fervor of someone who has spent the last 4 months with unlimited access to the fire station library. "She's something," Luke agreed. Roland looked at him. "You made the right call," he said. "Saying no to Denver." "I know. They'll have other openings. You've got time." "I've got time," Luke agreed. "You've got time." He looked around the festival, at the lights strung between the old brick buildings, at the mountains dark above the tree line, at the townspeople he was beginning, again, to know. At his mother laughing at something Patricia was saying to one of the women from the Ember Ladies' Auxiliary. At Mia running through the crowd with Emma, sure-footed and bright. At Ashley, standing at the cafe booth in her flannel shirt and her messy bun, handing out samples and talking to customers with that easy warmth that was just herself. Just exactly herself. She looked up and caught him watching her and smiled. He crossed the street. "Hey," he said. "Hey," she said. "How is pie judging? I have enemies now." "Welcome to small-town festival politics." She handed him a sample cup of apple cider from the ember. "Consolation prize." He took it. They stood together at the booth, shoulder to shoulder, the festival moving around them in its warm and cheerful way. "I was thinking," Luke said, warm and cheerful way. "Dangerous habit. I was thinking about next summer, whether Mia would want to do the junior firefighter program at the station. We're starting a youth outreach component. Roland thought." "She will lose her mind," Ashley said, "in the best possible way." "Good." He paused. "And I was thinking about the apartment above the bike shop on Clearwater. Jana said it's coming available in January. It would be closer to here." He chose the last 3 words carefully. Ashley was quiet for a moment. "Closer to here sounds good," she said. "Not—" He was careful. "Not rushing anything." "I know." She turned slightly toward him. "But closer sounds right." He nodded. They were quiet for a moment, watching the festival, watching the mountains, watching their daughter emerge from the crowd with Emma and a fistful of candy corn, heading toward them with the purposeful trajectory of someone who has identified her destination. "Dad!" Mia called, still 20 feet away. "Dad!" She had been using the word for 6 weeks, easily, naturally, as if it had always fit. It still did something to him every single time. "They're doing pumpkin carving at the end of the street, and Emma's dad said it's a competition, and I need you to help me because Emma's dad has an advantage because he did woodworking for 4 years." "A pumpkin carving advantage?" Luke said. "Structural integrity," Mia said firmly, skidding to a stop in front of him, cheeks red from running. "I have plans. Come on." She grabbed his hand and began pulling him down the street. He went and looked back at Ashley, who was laughing, full and free and beautiful. And he raised his free hand, and she shook her head and waved him off. The mountains were very dark now against a sky thick with stars. The string lights made yellow pools of warmth on the cobblestones. A bluegrass band had started up somewhere near the town hall, fiddle and banjo weaving through the cold, clear air. Somewhere near the town hall, Luke Harris let his daughter pull him through the festival crowd toward pumpkins and competition and a man with an unfair structural advantage, and thought, "This is it. This is exactly it." The pumpkin competition was, for the record, extremely competitive. Emma's father did have an advantage, but Mia had a plan and Luke had a pocket knife, and they worked with the focus of a 2-person incident command team, Mia directing and Luke executing, and their pumpkin, a firefighter figure complete with tiny carved helmet, won 2nd place, which Mia accepted with gracious dignity and Emma's family accepted with friendly respect. "2nd place," Mia said, eating a caramel apple on the way back to the cafe. "2nd place in a very competitive field," Luke said. "We should have gone for the flame detail on the coat," she said. "Next year?" he said. She considered this. "Next year we do the whole scene. Engine, hose, full structure fire." She looked up at him. "You'll still be here next year. Full structure fire." It wasn't quite a question. "I'll still be here," he said. She nodded, satisfied, and went back to her caramel apple. They walked through the festival, through the lights and the noise and the smell of cider and wood smoke, and met Ashley coming out of the cafe with her jacket on and her shift done for the night. Ashley looked at their faces. "2nd place?" she said. We were robbed, Mia said. The woodworking advantage, Luke explained. Ashley shook her head. She took Mia's free hand on one side and caught Luke's hand on the other side. And the three of them walked down Main Street together through the Cedar Falls Harvest Festival. The lights above them and the mountains around them, and the world exactly as wide and exactly as small as it needed to be. Next year, Mia said, with total authority. We plan for first. Next year, Ashley agreed. Next year, Luke said, and the word had a weight in it that all three of them understood. Not just the festival. The word had a weight in it. Not just the pumpkin competition. Next year in this town, under these mountains, in this family that had found its shape against all the odds, after all the years, through all the difficulty and the distance and the love that had never quite gone out. Next year, and the year after that, and all the years that were coming, ordinary and extraordinary, complicated and clear, the whole of it, the real thing, the life that was finally, fully, and at last, home. The end. The Firefighter's Surprised Daughter by JOAN Savage.